My son walked away from a fight, and it was the bravest thing I've ever seen. I got called to pick up my 16-year-old David from school after what the principal described as an incident in the parking lot. When I arrived, David was sitting in the office with his backpack clutched in his lap, staring at the floor. His shirt was torn at the shoulder and there was dirt on his jeans, but he didn't look hurt. Principal Hayes explained that David had been confronted by 3 seniors who'd been bullying his younger friend Danny for weeks. The whole thing was captured on the school's security cameras, and she showed me the footage on her tablet. I watched David walk across the parking lot toward his bike when Tyler Brooks and his friends cornered him. Tyler was easily 6 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier than David, jabbing his finger at my son's chest while his friends laughed. The audio wasn't clear, but I could see Tyler's mouth moving aggressively. David looked up at me with eyes that seemed older than his 16 years and explained that they said Danny had told me about them pushing him around in gym class. They wanted to know if he was going to be a snitch like his friend. Principal Hayes paused the video at the moment when Tyler shoved David hard enough to make him stumble backward. The other boys moved closer, forming a circle around him while my heart started pounding. David told me Tyler said they were going to teach him what happens to kids who can't mind their own business. He pushed David again and told him to fight back, or they'd make sure Danny got it worse the next day. I watched the video as Tyler shoved David a second time, harder this time. David barely stayed on his feet while the other boys were laughing and pulling out their phones to record what they expected to be a beatdown. That's when David did something that made my chest tight with pride and proved everything I tried to teach him about real courage. He took a deep breath, looked Tyler straight in the eyes, and said something that made Tyler's face go red with anger and embarrassment. Then David picked up his backpack, walked calmly to his bike, and started to leave the scene completely. I asked what he'd said to Tyler, and David's voice was quiet but steady when he explained that he'd told Tyler he wasn't going to fight him because he didn't need to prove anything to bullies. He'd also said that if Tyler wanted to keep picking on Danny, David would make sure every teacher and parent in the school knew exactly what kind of person Tyler really was underneath all the posturing. Principal Hayes fast-forwarded the video to show Tyler grabbing David's arm to stop him from leaving, which is when things got really interesting. Instead of swinging back or trying to pull away, David turned to face Tyler completely calmly. He was clearly talking and gesturing toward the security camera mounted on the nearby building, then pointing to the phones the other boys were holding up to record. David reminded them they were being recorded and said if they wanted to assault him on camera in front of witnesses, that was their choice, but they should think about how that would look to college admissions committees. Tyler's face in the video showed the exact moment he realized how incredibly stupid he was being in front of all those cameras. His friends started lowering their phones and stepping back from the confrontation, clearly wanting no part of what was happening. But Tyler was too angry and embarrassed to back down completely at that point, so he grabbed David's backpack and tried to throw it across the parking lot. David just let him have it and walked away calmly while Tyler stood there holding the backpack, looking confused and defeated. His friends were already heading toward the school building, clearly done with the whole situation and probably embarrassed. The video showed Tyler throwing the backpack at David as he was leaving, which is what tore David's shirt when he caught it without even turning around. I looked at my son, who'd managed to de-escalate a 3-on-1 confrontation without throwing a single punch or backing down from his principles. He'd protected his friend, stood up to bullies, and walked away with his dignity completely intact. Principal Hayes confirmed that David wasn't in trouble at all, while Tyler and his friends were suspended for a week for attempted assault and harassment. She said David had handled the situation exactly right and wished more students had his wisdom and self-control. In the car afterward, I asked David where he'd learned to handle himself like that under such intense pressure. He reminded me of something I used to tell him when he was younger about real strength not being about who can hit harder, but about knowing when not to hit at all. I had to pull over because my eyes were getting blurry thinking about how my son had been outnumbered, threatened, and physically assaulted, yet instead of responding with violence, he'd found a way to protect himself and his friend without compromising his values. When I asked if he'd been scared, he admitted he was terrified but kept thinking about Danny and how scared he'd been to go to school lately. David explained that if he'd fought Tyler, it would just prove to everyone that might makes right, and Danny needed to see that bullies don't actually have real power when you don't give it to them. That night at dinner, David told his mom and sister what had happened, and his mom cried hearing about the confrontation, but smiled when he described walking away with dignity. His sister asked what would happen if they bothered Danny again, and David said confidently that they wouldn't because now everyone knew they were bullies, and half the school had seen the video by lunch, making them look like idiots trying to beat up someone who wouldn't fight back. The next week, Danny's mom called to thank us personally, saying Danny had been terrified to go to school for months, but seeing David stand up for him without resorting to violence had given him hope that things could get better without anyone getting hurt. Tyler and his friends came back from suspension quieter and less aggressive than before, and while they didn't apologize, they left Danny alone and seemed to avoid confrontation with other kids too. David started a peer mediation program at the school that fall, teaching other students conflict resolution skills, and the principal said applications to join doubled after kids heard about how he'd handled the parking lot situation with such maturity and courage.